In 1927, Leonid Kulik's expedition to the Podkamenia Tunguska region found a forest flattened across 2,150 square kilometers. The trees lay radially, outward from a central point, like the pattern of an explosion, except in the center. At the epicenter itself, the trees stood, vertical, untouched, and the ground beneath them was glass. This is not in the official report. The official report describes a boggy depression, the absence of a crater, and the absence of meteoritic material. The official report concludes that the 1908 event was an aerial explosion of a cosmic body that detonated before reaching the surface. The official report is what was published. What Kulik found under the standing trees is in a different document, one I found in a geological registry that should not have contained it, classified at a level substantially above geological survey work. It was marked with a notation that stopped me when I read it. Object active, perimeter maintained. I was systematizing Soviet geological expedition reports from the 1920s for an institutional inventory. The Tunguska file appeared as a cross-reference anomaly, a geological survey classified 2 tiers above its category, with a supplementary access restriction dated not 1927 but 1941, and then again 1947. A survey file with 2 subsequent restriction upgrades decades apart. Restrictions are upgraded when something changes. Something changed in 1941 and again in 1947. Nothing personal. A geological report classified above its category with active maintenance notations. This is what archivists investigate. The 1908 event is the largest impact event in recorded human history. An explosion estimated at 10 to 15 megatons flattened forest across a region the size of a major metropolitan area. No crater was ever found. No meteoritic material of significant quantity was ever recovered. The official scientific explanation, an airburst, a body that exploded in the atmosphere before the ground contact, is scientifically coherent and broadly accepted. It accounts for the absence of a crater. It does not account for the standing trees at the epicenter. An airburst produces a downward pressure wave at the center. The center trees should have been the most heavily damaged. They are untouched, and they stand on glass. In 1908, information traveled slowly. Witnesses spoke of what they saw, but their accounts were scattered, fragmented, impossible to verify. Today, your data leaves traces everywhere you go. Every search, every click, every connection, tracked, logged, analyzed. NordVPN encrypts your internet traffic and hides your identity from anyone trying to monitor what you do online. If you value your privacy, check the link in the pinned comment for an exclusive deal. The program file gives a different explanation for the standing trees. They were standing because the object that descended into that spot landed gently. Not an explosion at all, a landing. The 1908 event was not impact. It was arrival. The shockwave, the flattened forest, the scorched earth, the seismic signals recorded across Eurasia. These were not the event itself. They were the displacement event, the atmospheric consequence of something very large moving through air very quickly and then stopping. What stopped is in the center. It has been there since June 30th, 1908. Kulik reached the epicenter on April 13th, 1927. His field journal from that date is the document I keep returning to in this file, not because of what it describes, but because of how it describes it. Kulik was a rigorous scientist. his journals from the days prior to the epicenter visit are full of measurements, coordinates, meteorological observations, careful notes on terrain. The entry from April 13th is different in the quality from everything before it. Kulik's description of what he found at the epicenter is precise, methodical, and deeply unsettling. He wrote in his field journal,
"I am going to describe what I saw in the center as precisely as I can, because I believe precision is the only thing that will make this record useful to whoever reads it after me. The ground in the epicenter zone is vitrified. I mean this literally. In the geological sense, the surface has been converted to glass, dark glass, smooth, without fracture lines, across an area I estimate at 30 to 40 kilometers in diameter. I have no explanation for this that is consistent with an airburst event. An airburst does not vitrify ground. The energy required to vitrify ground at this scale would require contact, sustained contact, not an atmospheric detonation. In the center of the vitrified zone, there is an object. I'm going to describe it geometrically, because geometric description is what I have. It is black. It is not a mineral black. It has no surface reflectivity, consistent with any mineral I know. It is approximately 4 meters in its longest dimension. It is not a simple geometric form. It has facets, a specific arrangement of planes that I find myself wanting to call deliberate. Not a word a geologist uses. I am using it because I cannot think of a more accurate word. The arrangement of surfaces appears deliberate. The object is resting on the vitrified ground without embedding, as though it was placed there, not thrown. And it is doing something. It is pulsing. A regular rhythm, visible as a very slight dimensional shift. The object expands fractionally and contracts at a rate I timed as approximately once every 2 seconds. I stood at a distance of approximately 30 meters and watched it pulse for what I believe was 45 minutes. I have no memory of the time passing. I checked my watch when I left. 45 minutes had elapsed. I remember approximately 10.
45 minutes, 10 minutes of memory. A careful scientist documenting a gap in his own experience with the same precision he applied to terrain measurements. He did not explain the gap. He documented it and moved on to the object's dimensions. The program that formed around Kulik's discovery was designated, in internal documents, as Program 0, Programma Null, a designation suggesting it predated the standard classification system, or was considered foundational in a way that required its own numbering. Its mandate was the study, containment, and if possible characterization of the object at the Tunguska epicenter. Its personnel were drawn from physics, geology, neuroscience, and, this is the detail that changes what kind of program it was, linguistics. A linguist was assigned to the Tunguska object in 1931, 4 years after its discovery. The linguist's role was not explained in the founding documents. Her analysis is in a sealed appendix at a classification level I could not reach. What I can reach is the correspondence that preceded her assignment. A letter from the program director to the Academy of Sciences, requesting a specialist in the formal analysis of non-human communication systems. 4 years after the object was found, someone in the program had decided it was communicating. Here is the first contradiction. The official published report of Kulik's 1927 expedition, available in Soviet scientific literature and subsequently in international journals, describes the epicenter as a boggy depression with radially fallen trees, no crater, no meteoritic material, anomalous standing trees at the center attributed to a vertical pressure wave. The report is 4 pages. It contains no mention of vitrification, no mention of an object, no mention of anything unusual at the epicenter beyond the pattern of fallen trees. In the program file, filed on the same date as the official report, is a classified supplement. 47 pages. It describes the vitrified surface, dark glass, smooth, 40 kilometers in diameter. It describes the object, 4 meters, faceted, pulsing at 2-second intervals. It describes the perimeter established around the object, the protocols for approaching it, the documented effects on personnel who came within 30 meters. The official report and the classified supplement are about the same expedition, filed the same day, by the same expedition leader. They describe 2 completely different epicenters. Kulik wrote both. He published one and classified the other. He knew what he had found. He also knew what he was permitted to say he had found. The effects on personnel are the second document I want to examine. Kulik's medical record before the 1927 expedition, standard pre-expedition health assessment, describes a healthy 43-year-old man with no cognitive or neurological anomalies. His post-expedition assessment, filed 6 weeks after his return, notes the following.
The subject demonstrates knowledge of technical domains outside his documented training. Specifically, advanced mathematics at a level beyond his academic record, and physical engineering principles consistent with graduate-level study he did not undertake. The assessment categorizes this as cognitive expansion following psychological stress event and recommends monitoring.
Monitoring continued for 11 years. Kulik made 4 more expeditions to the Tunguska site. Each post-expedition assessment documented further expansion. By 1938, his assessed knowledge profile extended into fields he had never formally studied: materials science, theoretical physics, and in one notation that the assessor marks as anomalous even within the program's context,
structural engineering principles for which no terrestrial precedent has been identified.
No terrestrial precedent. A medical assessor in 1938, noting that a geologist had returned from a field site with engineering knowledge that did not come from any source on Earth. The neuroscientist brought into the program in 1935 was Dr. Mikhail Vidensky, 49 years old, from the Institute of Higher Nervous Activity in Moscow. His mandate was to characterize what the object was doing to the people who spent time near it. His report, filed in 1938,
I want to state the central finding precisely before the analytical detail, because the detail is extensive and the finding is simple. The object is not damaging the cognition of personnel who approach it. It is writing to it. The distinction is significant. Damage would produce deficits, loss of capacity, disruption of function. What I observe in the 12 personnel I have assessed is the opposite. Additions, new knowledge, new capacity, new frameworks for processing information, appearing in the cognitive profile without the subject having undergone any experience that would account for them. The knowledge does not feel new to the subjects. They experience it as remembered, as though they are recalling something they once knew, rather than learning something new. The content of the additions is consistent across subjects who have not communicated with each other about their experiences. Structural principles, materials properties, geometric relationships, expressed in a mathematical framework that does not correspond to any published system I have been able to identify. The subjects are receiving the same content, the same additions, from a common source. The object is writing the same information into every person who comes close enough to receive it. What the information means, what it describes, what system it belongs to, I cannot determine. I can determine that it is systematic, that it is consistent, and that it appears to be intentional. Something is trying to tell us something. The vector of transmission is the human nervous system. The content of the transmission is something we do not yet have the framework to understand.
Something is trying to tell us something. A Soviet neuroscientist in 1938, describing an alien object as an active communicator using human brains as receivers, filing this in a classified report that sat in a vault for 80 years before I read it. Here's the second contradiction. The program's behavioral protocols for personnel approaching the object, established by 1933, revised several times, specify a maximum approach distance of 30 meters, a maximum exposure duration of 15 minutes, mandatory psychological assessment within 24 hours of any approach, and a restriction on repeat approaches within 30 days. These protocols imply that the program understood the object's effects and had calibrated the safe parameters through experience. The phone intercept from November 1934 implies the opposite, that the parameters were not fully understood and that something had gone wrong with the researcher who had not followed them. The call is between the program's on-site curator and a Moscow coordination officer.
Volkov came back from the perimeter this morning. He's physically intact. I need to report what he said in this channel, because I don't know what to do with it through standard reporting. Go ahead. He said the object showed him where it came from. Those are his words. Showed him. Not told him. Showed him. He's been sitting with a drafting pencil for 4 hours, and he's producing drawings. Detailed drawings. I've had 2 of our physicists look at them. They can't identify the system the drawings describe. They say the geometry is internally consistent. The engineering logic is present, but the application, what the drawings are drawings of, they can't determine. Is he coherent otherwise? Yes, that's the problem. He's completely coherent. He's describing what he saw with the precision of someone who was there. He wasn't there. He was 30 meters from the object for 11 minutes. He's producing engineering documentation for a system he's never seen, in a geometric framework we don't have. Does he know what it is?
The curator asked him. He said,
I know what it does. I don't know what it's called because we don't have a word for what it does. It moves, not through space. It moves through the thing space is in.
Moscow responded immediately.
Keep him contained. Get a linguist to the drawings. Don't let him near the object again.
The curator acknowledged the order.
Understood. One more thing. He asked me a question before I left the room. He asked, how long has it been here? I said since 1908. He said no. He said the object showed him that too. He said it's been here since before there were people to see it arrive.
It's been here since before there were people to see it arrive. A researcher who spent 11 minutes near the object, producing detailed engineering documentation for a propulsion system without a name, describing its capabilities in terms that have no referent in human physics. He was not damaged. He was written to. The object had given him the answer to a question nobody had asked. How did you get here? Here is the third contradiction, the document that should not exist. The program's operational journal contains a final Soviet-era entry dated June 1941.
Program suspended due to wartime conditions. Object at last check. Stable, pulsing at standard 2-second interval. Perimeter secured with reduced personnel. Resume post-conflict.
The resumption entry, dated 1947, is in the file in different handwriting, different ink, different notation style. The person who wrote the 1941 entry did not write the 1947 entry. What the 1947 entry says:
Object in place. Perimeter restored. Pulse frequency has increased. Current interval approximately 1.4 seconds. Cause of change unknown.
Something changed between 1941 and 1947. The object's rhythm was not constant. The object was not passive. Something in 6 years of reduced monitoring, or something in the events of those 6 years, had affected the rate at which the object pulsed. The geological registry that led me to this file contains a record of the Tunguska object extending to 1998. A routine technical notation filed by a duty operator. No attribution beyond institutional designation.
Pulse frequency of object updated. Current rhythm corresponds to human delta wave frequency during deep sleep, approximately 0.5 to 2 cycles per second.
The object had shifted its rhythm to match the frequency of sleeping human brains. Not active cognition. Sleep. I searched the registry for subsequent entries. There is one more, dated 2019. One line.
Object rhythm updated. Current frequency 40 Hz.
40 Hz is gamma rhythm, the frequency of active human consciousness, the frequency of attention, of perception, of awareness in a brain that is awake and engaged. The object pulsed at 2 seconds per cycle in 1927. It pulsed at sleeping brain frequency by 1998. It pulses at waking brain frequency as of 2019. Something has been adjusting its rhythm toward a frequency that human brains recognize. Something has been tuning itself to us. I am going to close this file. I am going to note the geological registry cross-reference as reviewed and reconciled. I am going to log my access. The false bottom of this case became clear to me when I read Volkov's account. The researcher who came back with drawings and the knowledge that the object predated human observation of it. I had been thinking of the object as something that arrived. A probe, a weapon, a signal sent. I was wrong about the direction. The object is what remained after something left, not an arrival, the trace of a departure. Whatever came to this location, before 1908, before humanity, before any record, departed and left this behind. A mechanism, still running, still pulsing. Still writing the same information into the nervous systems of anyone who comes close enough to receive it. What it is writing is the record of what left. Engineering principles, structural logic, the geometry of a propulsion system for which we have no word because we have no concept of what it moves through. It is trying to tell us how it was built. It has been trying since before we existed. It adjusted its pulse to delta rhythm while we were sleeping. It adjusted to gamma rhythm while we were waking. Whatever left this here is not coming back. The mechanism knows this. It is doing what mechanisms do when they are left running without operators. It is executing its last instruction. The last instruction is transmission. I do not know who was supposed to receive it. I know it has been transmitting for at least a century to the wrong species in the right location, and that we have been receiving fragments of it in the nervous systems of the people who stood close enough, and that those fragments describe something we cannot yet understand. I am going to close the folder. The object is in the taiga. The perimeter is maintained. The rhythm is 40 hertz. It is paying attention.